And it's been 3 months again since my last video. I know, I've made some false promises that I was going to upload videos on a more regular basis, but I failed once again. And here I am making another video. But this time, I really feel more dedicated to make more videos. Um, I want to make more professional debate style videos where I present clear arguments, and it's really purely for the purpose of engaging into serious, respectful, long, and profound debates with people. And I really want to interact more with people who make comments on my videos, so my audience. So thank you in advance if you leave an interesting comment. And feel free to share any requests about any subject. Okay, so on to the subject of the video, which is abortion. This time, it's not going to be my personal opinion about abortion, but it's an overview of the 10 most common pro-life and pro-choice arguments that you see all over the internet. And I'm probably going to tackle and explore each separate argument in a separate video. But for now, it's just an overview. And again, feel free to add more arguments or typical pro-life or pro-choice arguments. Now, I have to admit, I'm using ChatGPT as my main source of information. So the arguments that I will present are basically print screens of ChatGPT information. And I will most likely continue to use ChatGPT in the future, and sometimes interfering with some personal thoughts here and there. Now, I use ChatGPT to portray the arguments in a more structural and conceptual way, because that's what my brain really needs, which is structure. Alright, so let's finally get to the video. So, to start with, almost all arguments regarding abortion reduce to a few core tensions or questions. The first question is, what is a person? Which has to do with biology versus consciousness versus potential. Second question, what matters more? Right to life versus bodily autonomy. And then the third question, what counts morally? So we're talking about actual experiences versus potential future. All right, so now here is a brief overview of the 10 typical arguments. The first argument is personhood argument. So pro-lifers would say life begins at conception, and a fetus is a human being, so it has a right to life, and therefore abortion is morally wrong. But then the pro-choicers would say, well, being biologically human is not the same as being a person with rights. Personhood may require consciousness, awareness, ability to feel, so early abortion may not violate, quote unquote, a person. The second argument is a consciousness argument. A pro-choice argument would say, pro-choicers would say, moral value depends on mental capacities, and early fetuses have no consciousness or awareness, and therefore abortion is morally permissible, especially early. And then the pro-lifers would say, newborns also lack full consciousness / self-awareness, and people in comas still have rights, so consciousness alone is not a stable criterion. The third argument is the potential future argument. Pro-lifers would say, killing is wrong because it deprives someone of a future, and a fetus has a valuable future, and therefore abortion is morally similar to killing. But then the pro-choicers would say, well, a fetus has a potential future, right? Not an actual one. So, yeah, preventing a life also prevents a future. So, not all lost futures are morally equal. Sorry, the voice crack. The fourth argument is bodily autonomy argument. So the pro-choicers would say No one has the right to use another person's body without consent. And pregnancy requires using someone's body. Therefore, abortion is justified even if the fetus has value. But then the pro-lifers would say parents have special responsibilities towards their children, and pregnancy is not like a stranger using your body, so autonomy may not fully override responsibility. The fifth argument is the right to life versus right to choose. The pro-lifers would say the right to life is the most fundamental right. It outweighs other rights, including bodily autonomy. But then the pro-choicers would say rights are not absolute. You cannot be forced to donate organs even to save a life. So the right to life may not include the right to use someone's body. Okay, the sixth argument is a suffering slash quality of life argument. Pro-choicers would say if a child will suffer severely, illnesses, disability, then abortion may prevent suffering, and that can be seen as compassionate. But the pro-lifers would say, well, yeah, disability is not the same as a life not worth living. There is a risk of discrimination, and therefore predicting bad lives is ethically dangerous. All right, the seventh argument is slippery slope argument. Pro-lifers would say if we allow abortion based on consciousness or choice, then why not infanticide, if I pronounce it correctly? Or why not euthanasia of vulnerable people? So fear of moral boundaries are eroding. The pro-choicers would say society already draws clear lines at birth, for example, and so the slippery slopes are not inevitable. Okay, the eighth argument is biologically human argument. Pro-lifers would say a fetus is scientifically a human organism, therefore it deserves moral protection. The pro-choicers would say a human organism is a biological fact, and moral rights is a philosophical decision. Therefore, science alone doesn't determine ethics. Okay, the ninth argument is the responsibility argument. Pro-lifers would say if you choose to have sex, you accept the risk of pregnancy. Therefore, you are responsible for the child. And the pro-choicers would say, well, consent to sex is not the same as consent to pregnancy. It's also relevant in cases like contraception, failure, or assault. And then lastly, the last argument, which is legal versus moral argument. Pro-lifers would say even if abortion is legal, it can still be immoral. And the pro-choicers would say, well, laws should not enforce one moral view or on everyone, and people should be free to decide based on their own values. All right, those were the 10 arguments. I thank you for listening, and yeah, I will see you in the next video, I guess.